다음에는 today
Today,
남반에게 상호를 하는 도마라 첨지시하다 첩지도
I'd like to, first of all, express my greetings to all of you. So tomorrow is the New Year's Day of the Western calendar 2021. And so in this current year, we've had many difficult situations in the world this year. In particular, there has been the COVID-19 epidemic. And everyone has had great difficulties this year. We've all fallen into a situation of great difficulty. And many of our friends and acquaintances have passed away or have lost money or lost work. However, all phenomena are impermanent, and so everything changes. And never do we always stay in the same situation. And so in this, I think we can have the hope that things will go better in this next year. And there are reasons why things will go better in the next year. And so for this reason, I think that in this new year, I'd like to wish all of my friends, all my Dharma friends and acquaintances, I'd like to wish all of you, offer you Tashidilek and New Year's greetings. In particular to all the Sangha members and the Kempos and the teachers and the Kaji Shedras. I hope that you are all happy and healthy in the next year, and that you are able to practice your listening contemplation as you wish in this new year. So we have Bokar Shedra.
Oh yeah.
Now, over the past couple of days, I gave a brief introduction to the life of Gampopa, the author of these 4 Dharmas of Gampopa that are the topic of this teaching. And so in a short period of time, I don't really have enough confidence to take the entire life and liberation of a great being and explain it in all the main points, saying this is what it is, this is what it means in such a short time. Nor do I have enough knowledge. From another perspective, the life stories or the biographies of Gampopa are different than those of his teacher, Milarepa. We don't always read them. And so we don't have enough time. We don't have the faults of not learning enough about it and not realizing too little from the story of his liberation and of being unfamiliar with it. So generally, it's often hard to get excited about reading histories. And it's easy to get discouraged. So, other than people who have great interest in history or who are doing research, there are few who want to start to read them on their own. Like if we think about Marpa Milarepa and Gampopa, for each of them, there are at least 10 different biographies of each of them. And so in the very beginning, it's difficult to even know which one we should choose to read. The best is with Milarepa, written by Tsangyen Heroka. It's different than other life and liberation stories, which are more like lists. It's not like that. It's not just a list. And through its storytelling and beautiful writing, This is a biography that brings out a feeling of life, and it can move people. Pretty much everyone in Tibet who knows how to read has read this life of Milarepa. But there's no such well-known biography of Gampopa that everyone can talk about. And so because there isn't any, when I was teaching on his life and liberation, I looked at many different biographies. And as I taught it, I put a little bit of everything in the stew and kind of mixed them all together. And so for that reason, I don't think that it was of high quality or something that turned out well. But in the future, I'm currently writing a commentary on the jewel ornament of liberation, or the ornament of precious liberation. And as a side project, I've the thought that maybe I'll write, research the stories of Gampopa's life and liberation, and to write a new one. Yesterday, in any case, as I mentioned the other day, when we were practicing, for all of us who are practicing the Dharma, the lives and liberations of the great masters are not just lists of historical events or topics for textbooks. We need to think of them as like guidebooks. They give us direction. Direction for our lives, like they're giving us examples. It's important to listen to them in a really deep and profound way, and to actually put them into practice and to use them as an example for our actual practice. So now, from today on, I will actually speak about the four dharmas of Gampopa themselves. So now, there's this, the person who put them all together in the four dharmas all together was Gampopa, but the topic that they summarize is not just the main points of some particular portion or sect of the Dharma or of a particular lineage. They're the pith instruction that point out the important stages and critical points for sustaining the practice of the words of the Buddha and the sutras and tantras. So for this reason, not only do the followers of Gampopa and the Dakpo Kagyu lineages, but also other Tibetan Buddhist lineages, the Sakya, Gelok, and Nyingma, also speak very highly of this summary of the four dharmas. They consider it to have many critical points. And so this is and so we can see that this is the situation with them. So to just give some examples of this, to just give a few examples. There is a great scholar of Sutra and Tantra in the Sankhya tradition named Gorampa Sunam Senge. And he wrote in his instructions on the parting from the four attachments. And the title of this is called A Key to the Points of the Profound Meaning. And within this, what he wrote is, when the Guru in Great Sakya Kunga Nimbo was the age of 12, he practiced on Manjushri and saw him in person in 6 months. Protector Manjushri said to him, if you cling to this life, you're not a practitioner. If you cling to samsara, you have no renunciation. If you cling to your own aims, you have no bodhicitta. If there is grasping, it is not the view. This contains the entire practice of the 6 transcendences. Their meaning is that if you part from this life, your mind will become the Dharma. If you part from the attachment to samsara, the Dharma will become the path. If you part from your own aims, the path will dispel confusion. If you part from grasping to the four extremes, confusion will arise as wisdom. And so basically here what he's doing is what we need to give up. He's presenting the four poundings of intentions, and what we need to accomplish, he's presenting the four dharmas of Kampopa. And so in this way, he's combining the four partings from attachment and the four dharmas of Kampopa. Likewise, there's the fearless Kunchen Bodong. And so there are instructions on the tradition, Mahamudra from that tradition, called the essence of Amrita, the word of Samitas. It says, third, the way to practice has three parts: the yoga, the preliminaries, the main practice, and follow through. The first has two parts: the common and special preliminaries. The first has four: instructions on the mind becoming Dharma, the Dharma becoming the path dispelling confusion, and confusion arising as bodhicitta. So here he says confusion arising as bodhicitta. So here he teaches the four common preliminaries according to the progression of the four dharmas of Kampopa. Likewise, there's a Janangpa scholar named Tsamin Sunam Sampo who wrote a text called The Guru Yoga Way into Blessings. It's a very short text in which he, when he's making a supplication, the words of the supplication are, bless me so that my mind becomes the Dharma. Bless me so that the true Dharma becomes the path. Bless me so that the path dispels confusion. Bless me so that confused appearances are severed from their root. And so these are like the main, it makes a supplication that uses the main points of the four dharmas of Kampopa. And likewise, there's a Guru Yoga given to the single lineage at Shugyen, written by Lord Tsongkhapa. And so what it says in this is, and visualize above the ground of your head and recite, precious Guru, bless me so that my mind becomes the Dharma. Bless me so that Dharma becomes the path. Bless me to have no obstacles to the Dharma, and so forth. And so this is basically very similar to the four dharmas of Kampopa. Likewise, from the hearing lineage of the hermit in the Gelug tradition, there's the Panchen Lobsang Chudin who wrote a root text on the Mahamudra, the precious God and Kagyu tradition. It is entitled The Brighted Lamp, and which says, in particular, the Lord of Yoga, Milarepa, the supreme student of unexcelled mantra, meditated upon and taught first loving kindness, compassion, and bodhicitta, the wish for liberation and karma and results in death. The principal disciple of the Jetsung, Kampopa, who established the confluence of the Kadam and Mahamudra, also taught what is known as the four dharmas of Kampopa: the mind becoming Dharma, the Dharma becoming the path dispelling confusion, and confusion arising as wisdom. The explanation of these is the same as the mind training of the Kadampas. So basically he's teaching the way that the general way that Lord Milarepa and his disciples taught, the preliminaries, and in particular the four dharmas of Kampopa, fit well with the Kadampa instructions on mind training. Similarly, in the Nyingma lineage, the words of many of the scholars and meditators also recite the words of these four dharmas of Kampopa, but I'm not going to recite any specific examples because there are too many examples and I don't know which one to choose. So basically, there are different ways of summarizing the points of each lineage, each of which have their own points. There is the four thoughts that turn the mind of the Kadampa, the Pardam for the four attentions, and the Sakya, and the three principal points of the path in the Gelug. And so there are many different these, and each of them, for all of us Dharma practitioners, they have their own particular features. And for us Dharma practitioners, there are priceless instructions that even tens of thousands of ounces of gold couldn't buy. If we are able to practice all of them without them contradicting each other, then we will have actually entered the gate to the Tibetan Buddhist Dharma, and we will have had that good fortune. If instead of practicing them ourselves, we said, I have my sacred instructions alone are sacred, and their instructions aren't worth anything, and only engage in partisanship and attachment, there wouldn't be any point. And in addition to there being no point, we would be creating grave misdeeds with regard to the Dharma, the misdeed of rejecting the Dharma. So thus it is always important for us to give ourselves advice and to give ourselves good interest in order to not accumulate the misdeed of of rejecting the Dharma, practicing the Dharma as Dharma, letting the Dharma become the Dharma. And so that we never let ourselves, inspiring ourselves, advising ourselves to never criticize another individual's Dharma practice or the Dharma of another lineage. Now, you might say that since the four Dharmas of Gampopa are so important, so sacred, and so everyone considers it in this way, so now, bring me the text. Where's the text that Gampopa wrote the four Dharmas of Gampopa? Bring me that text. And if you say that, so if you say, wait, so first, it's like that, the Kampa say, first there's resetting the Dharma becoming first, Dharma becoming the path second. And if you practice the Dharma besides the confusion is the third, if you do that, that's not enough. It doesn't help. People need a text to look at. They aren't saying just recite the words. So if you think, where is the text? You need to look for the work. And so where do we begin looking at it? We need to look in the collected works of Gampopa. And so now, the first thing in the first printed edition of the collected works of Gampopa that is still extant is one presided by the Lord of Dharma, Sunam Lundut Dao Jeltsin at Dalha Gumpa. So this includes 40 teachings of the collected works of Gampopas. So this is like the first collected works of Gampopa. And most of the later editions used this as it's their primary source. There's also a collection of shorter collection of teachings of Dhammas within 3 volumes that are labeled Ka, Ka, and Ga. And so there's that 3-volume collection. And later, Derge Pargan, the Derge Press, they printed a 2-volume edition that was labeled A and Vam. In all of there is also a text that is the title of a text called The Hearing Lineage of Peerless Gampopa, and that's not included in any of those. And it's qualifying reads taken by Dapo Nigom on instructions of the wish-fulfilling jewel, hearing lineage of Chakasamvaras taught by Milarepa. Later, he resolved the doubts, corrected them in the presence of Jetsun Rechungpa. So Dapo Nigom is another name, is a name for Gampopa. So this is a text on the hearing lineage. And there is also, as I mentioned the other day, there is a medical text entitled Treasury of Beneficial Knowledge, the Stainless Words of Dape Laje. And so there is also this medical text. And there's also a handwritten manuscript collected works of Gampopa that I saw today. There is a biography of him written by Yo Chun Sampa. And so there's another one by Holayapa. So whether now this is we need to examine whether these are the same as the texts we have by Holayapa on the four dharmas and so forth. But in any case, it would be good to compare the printed editions of Gampo's works and the handwritten manuscripts, and to edit them and compile them all. And the reason for this is that there are many texts that are in manuscript form but are not in the printed editions. Last night I saw in a handwritten manuscript of a biography of Gampopa written by Gyalakchen Sampa. And this is something we just never see. We know that there is a supplication written by Chun Sampa, but the idea that but no one's ever heard that there is a life of Milarepa written by Chun Sampa. So, and there are many explanations about that, but in brief, even though Gampopa is not here in purpose, and we can't hear in person, and we can't actually hear his hear his speech live, the teachings and writings he left behind are like his representative. So we need to really consider them really important and sacred. But usually we think like we have, if you say there's a speaking statue, then we say, oh, that's really sacred. We think it's really important. But there actually is actual words that are in writing that have come to us the way through his collected. We wrap them in cloth. We don't pay much attention to them and toss them in a dusty place and then stick them in a shrine. Now, if they're Dharma texts, we wouldn't never think about throwing them in the rubbish, but really it's just about the same as putting them in a rubbish bin. So this is, it says, said by Shapko Tsororandral in his works that says, read well the 2-volume collected works of Gampopa, the crown jewel of all the Kajus. These teachings on the confluence of Kadam and Mahamudra are more wondrous and greater in blessings than other words and termas. The Kaju masters of the past all received siddhi through these profound teachings. Being behind Buddha's teachings through the compassion of the Guru, who is incomparably kind, is a great fortune. Masters and disciples who long for the Kaju Dharma do as taught in the collected works, and experience and realization will dawn. So here he's praising Gampopa's life. And so similarly, as this taught, it's extremely important for us to read the collected works, as is said. So now we come to the main topic, the four Gampopas within the collected works. And as explained in the first day, in the collected works of Gampopa, there are several teachings that elaborate on the four dharmas. But in terms of distinct or separate or independent dharma teachings that teach only the four dharmas, there are three. One is the string of jewels, the supreme path of the three individuals in 11½ stanzas. There's one called The Four Dharmas in Brief, and one with no title that begins Namo Guru, the Dharma must become the Dharma. So there are these three texts. And among these three, the first, there's a question or doubt we need to consider. In his last testament, Gampopa said, future individuals who think they will not meet me, please read the string of jewels of the Supreme Path and the ornament of precious realization. So there's no doubt about the ornament of precious realization or the jewel ornament of liberation. But we need to identify which text is that string of jewels? And there are three different ways of identifying this. So there are three texts in the collected works that have that have the title, the string of jewels of the Supreme Path. The first is the one I just mentioned, the one in 11 and a half stanzas. The second is the string of jewels, the Sublime Path, which gives advice organized in sets of 10 sets of. And the third is Conversations with Gampopa, string of jewels of the Supreme Path, which is notes taken by Patmo Drupa, which is basically the pith instructions on identifying the natural state or pointing out instructions on the mind. And it's written in prose. Of these three, the first one, the one in 13 and 11 and a half stanzas, in the Drupakaji, they say that the string of jewels is the Supreme Path that they say is the one of the two that Gampopa mentioned is this text, the string of jewels is the Supreme Path. Kunchen Pema Karpo wrote in his Son on the Path of the Three Individuals an explanation of the four dharmas. There is this text that he wrote, and what it says in this text: when Atisha came to Tibet, at the request of Hlajan Chapur, he wrote the lamp for the path of enlightenment. And this is what distills the essence of the stages of the path of the three individuals. In that, the stages of the path, the first two are taught briefly, and the latter two are explained in detail. And so there are many these days who assert that it teaches the stages of Mahayana path and the path of the three individuals, but this is laughable. It only teaches the last stage of the path in detail. Thus, the king of Dharma, Chandra Prabha Kumara, wrote the Ornament of Precious Realization and the String of Jewels of the Supreme Path, both of which teach all three of these stages in depth. The long explanations are probably taken from his Dharma talks. And so this really identifies it very clearly as being that stages of the path of Supreme Jewels. Now for the second one is Gadapa's advice, a string of jewels is a Supreme Path, the one that is organized in sets of 10 bits of advice. There's the 10 necessary dharmas and the... what else is there? And fixing mistakes, the 10 on fixing mistakes and so forth, so they're the 10. Now, of course, some of them have 18 and some have more than 10, but most of them are in sets of 10, right? And if we look at the colophon of that text, and if also look at the way that is placed in the collected works, when we look at all of those, you'd say that this string of jewels of the Supreme Path, we think that it must be this text. And many Kajupas say that the Supreme Path, that is of the two, the jewel ornament and the Supreme Path, say that it's this one. But another thing that we need to consider, though, is that there's a text by the Kadampa Geshe Chegompa that has exactly the same sets as the string of jewels of the Supreme Path. I can't say that they're all the same, but probably 50 or 60% of them are exactly the same. So how's that? So this is another thing we need to research and we need to examine. Last one is the third text known as the String of Jewels of the Supreme Path. It's the notes by Patmo Drupa. But there's no one who identifies it probably as the text of the Supreme Jewels. So in brief, between the Ornament of Precious Religious and the String of Jewels of the Supreme Path, it would be if the kajus were all to come together and determine in common which is the text that is intended here. Otherwise, it'd be a situation where we kajubas don't even really understand Kampapa's last testament. And if we said that, it'd be a bit embarrassing and a bit shameful. And if you talk about Kujin Pengwarism, there's the string of jewels in verse, and he says that this is the root text of the four dharmas. And there's also commentary on it by the Gompa Sutra Nimpa. But as I mentioned on the first day, within that string of jewels in verse, it only says, explained by the four dhammas, they are each practiced by view, meditation, and conduct. But it does not clearly identify each of the four dharmas. However, J. Gomsu's commentary on that says, this is divided into four, the Dharma becoming Dharma, the Dharma becoming the path dispelling confusion, and confusion arising as wisdom. Each of them is taught in terms of view, meditation, and conduct. And so this clearly identifies each of the four dharmas. And also the two texts, the two independent texts in the collected works that clearly identify the four dharmas are, as I described before, there's one with a title and one without. Now, when we are identifying the four dharmas, there are different ways that they are formulated, as I mentioned the other day. In the words of Kampopa and his direct disciples, there's no difference. In Gomsu's commentary, it does say Dharma becoming the Dharma and mind becoming the Dharma. So there are two different examples, but I think that probably the latter was probably changed at a later date, I think. It seems to me. But up until now, I've not yet seen a clear presentation of how the change happened in the way the formulation of the four dharmas. However, in Karma Kenjin Darje wrote in his direct experiential instructions, the words of Lord Gampopa, instructions on the four Gampopas of Peerless Gampopa. Here it says, the Peerless Gampopa Chandraprabha Kumbhara wrote in the stages of the path of the three individuals in the practice of unified Mahamudra condensed into one, that the four dharmas are the mind becoming dharma, the dharma becoming path dispelling confusion, and confusion arising as four. These four. Here, in a different formulation, it says, the dharma becoming the dharma becoming the path dispelling confusion, and confusion arising as wisdom. However, in meaning, there is no difference. But according to Dharmapadeshin Shepa's text, the form that is related to the four thoughts that turn the mind is that in the tradition of the Pith instructions. So if we look at the way that this is written, if we extrapolate from how he says it, it seems that it must have changed in the time of Deshin Shekpa. I've also seen Mahamudra instructions by Deshin Shekpa's direct disciple, Mase Tokten, Trung Mase Tokten, who is the founder of the Surman Kaju. And what it says in these instructions is, in the concise or detailed Pithic instructions of the Kaju, whichever they are, the main body must be the four dharmas of glorious Karma Baba. The four dharmas are the mind becoming dharma, the dharma becoming the path, and the path dispelling confusion, confusion arising as wisdom. And so, as it says that, so I think it probably has changed by that time, or how it happened. But in any case, there, in that text, it has said so. But another direct disciple of Deshin Shepa was Golotsawa Shuna. He's the one who wrote the Blue Annals. the historical text, the blue annals. And here he wrote a commentary on the Sublime Continuum. It is probably the longest commentary on the Sublime Continuum in Tibetan. And here, in describing in the passage on refuge in that commentary, it says, here from Gompa's presentation as the four dharmas, dharma becoming the dharma is the path for the lesser individual, dharma becoming the path is for the middling individual, the path dispelling confusion is for the greater individual, confusion arising as wisdom is for the greater than great. And so he takes the formulation that's given by Gampopa and presents it that same formulation. So if you have this two lamas in the same century, and one of it says, it seems to have changed, and another it seems hasn't changed. So there are these two different. And so perhaps one might be the tradition of pith instructions that would have changed, and there was one that didn't change. And I think if we think it that way, it's probably like that. But in any case, Golotsa Shunupal took his bodhisattva vows from the Lord of Dharma, Deshin Shekpa, the fifth Karmapa. And he also was a student of Shamar. He was also the most important teacher of Shamachara Yeshe. And in his liberation story, when I saw that I read yesterday, he was kind of kidding with the students. He was just talking with the students. But it's not quite like it's needling. It's like he was saying he's kind of, but he said, with my own eyes, I saw Chija Deshin Shekpa, I saw Jedzong Kaba, and they're not like you. I've met Chija Deshin Shekpa. I've met Tsongkhapa. They're not the same as you. It's like he's needling the students. He's kind of pretending to be bigger. So Gulotama had many students, but among them, and Deshin Shekpa was the one who received the Bodhisattva vow, and Tsongkhapa was the person from whom he received many tantric teachings, including the 6 yogas, and so he considered them very important. So in brief, the main point is there are the different formulations of the words of the four dharmas, but in meaning it's possible that there's not really any difference in the meaning, but the way the words emphasize and bring out power, and the way they're understood are different. For if we think about it, if we say my mind become the Dharma, or more literally, my mind go to the Dharma, we might understand it as the mind merely needed to go in the direction of the Dharma. When you say the Dharma become the Dharma, it means that we need to turn away from the 8 worldly dharmas and false dharma masquerading as dharma and so forth, and practice the dharma just as it's done. So I think this is a more profound understanding. But when you say the dharma become the dharma, it's not quite as immediately understandable as may my mind become the dharma. Because when you say when the dharma become the dharma, then it's something you really need to think about. And if you take it as dharma, then how can it become the dharma? It's possible that people might criticize it in that way. And so for these reasons, the one that's more easy to understand, that is less confusable, if it changed for that reason, then that could be that. I don't know. It seems like there are probably people who confused it who criticized the four dharmas. And so maybe it's changed later for that. And so how do we know that this must have happened? There is in the words of Drupal Kunak, there's a story of Drupal Kunak saying, He says that many people criticize the four dharmas of Kampa, and he explains the four dharmas. And when in his commentary, he describes it all in connection with the ultimate, not into the relative. It's extremely profound. And so it explains it in terms of the profound nature, and so it's difficult to explain. So I'm not going to give a citation from it today. In any case, for today. So we've talked a little bit about the formulation of that. We've talked about the origin of the four dharmas and the formulation. And so from tomorrow, I'll talk about the actual four, the mind becoming dharma, the dharma becoming the path, and so forth. I still have a little bit of time, but I'm going to take a bit of a rest. It's probably better. And because if I work too hard, it's not. If you try too hard, it's not good, is it? And so we're going to leave it here for today.